This is your reminder that the BBC has yet to address the consistent transphobic leanings in its news coverage, and while the team behind Doctor Who is not connected to this in any way since this is a BBC-owned property, I'm going to keep pointing it out until the problem gets resolved. Links in a pinned comment below if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll stop saying it when it stops being a problem. All right, Russell. I just have one thing to say to you. God damn it, you got me! Part 1 of a Part 2 finale. It's time. Season's too short. It is way too short. Did a video talking about that. I stand by it. Regardless of anything else I'm going to say, I still stand by that. The Legend of Ruby Sunday. There's a bit going on here. And if you're waiting for my opinion on the big reveal that we got, which is still leaving a number of other big reveals still yet to be dealt with, but obviously that's being held on to until the next episode. But my opinions on that are not going to come until towards the end, because that reveal happened towards the end, and I have a fair number of thoughts associated with that. Let's start with the beginning. The Doctor showing up at Unit. I really like that one of the first things he does coming out of the TARDIS, well, first of all, I love his entrance.
Give me the loving!
But one of the first things he does is make a point of learning the name of everyone he doesn't already know.
Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Harriet, head of the archive.
Harriet, nice to meet you.
I just like that. I can't remember the Doctor ever doing that. Like, the Doctor has learned the names of some people who he's seen more than once in other incarnations or whatever, but going out of his way to learn their names, like, that's just kind of cool. It does make me wonder, though, why he didn't ask, hey, where's Shirley? Because I was wondering that. I really hope she's not going to go the way of Osgood and just be like someone we'd never mention anymore, even though she was fun and recurring. Hope we get to see her again. That having been said, we have Harriet and we have Morris. Morris is a weird one because on paper, I feel like I should hate this. But I kind of like it. I don't know. I feel like it's just the right weird angle to come at this from. Because, like, when he first said genius 13-year-old, I kind of started to roll my eyes. But then he mentioned
accelerated genius. Thanks for passing, asteroid.
I'm like, oh. Well, okay then. Sure. Why not? I don't know. He worked well enough. I guess he's actually, like, a known person, like, in the UK. I have no idea. I don't know who this actor is, but I thought he worked fine in the part. And we also get Rose Noble back, which is nice. She doesn't get a ton to do in this. She is just kind of there, but honestly, if they want to have her just be around and show up on occasion, I'm totally okay with that. And I like the subtle way in which the Doctor asks about the 14th Doctor, just asking,
How was your mum? How's your uncle? Oh, good.
Because if you didn't realize that was alluding to that, there's a little bit at the end of the giggle where he refers to her as a niece.
Just can't turn down my favorite niece.
Ah, niece. I like that.
That was nice. That was sweet. So he shows up and he immediately wants their help, trying to figure out the deal with this woman that he keeps seeing. They're already on top of it, which is kind of a fun gag, like especially with him being like, oh, S-Triad, that's an anagram of TARDIS, and they're all just like,
Well, obviously. Thank you.
Even I got that.
That is why we've been watching her.
Actually, we were watching her even before that because we tend to monitor the tech billionaires. They've gone evil on us a fair few times. And that's where we get our little subtle dig at Elon Musk.
God knows we stopped enough of them. Well, except the obvious.
We'll get him.
Not that he's an actual genius, but certainly the perception of him is. So I'll let it slide for the sake of a dig. And the idea that UNIT would go after him is, I know that's not reality, but it's fun to think about. Oh, and in addition to Elon Musk, we get a little dig at the Prime Minister, who they don't even bother to name.
Even the Prime Minister can't walk into UNIT.
Especially the Prime Minister.
Because they don't have to, because any of them lately would suit that line just fine. But we learn the name of this woman is Susan Triad. And of course, there was a big focus on the name Susan. And this was where I got real nervous. Now, you might find that slightly confusing if you've watched my other reviews, because I was real irritated when it appeared that the Devil's Cord seemed to be implying that she is definitely dead.
Time Lords were murdered. Genocide rolled across time and space like a great big cellular explosion. Maybe it killed her too.
Now, granted, like, is that written in stone? No, but that whole thing was a red flag for me, because either it was just establishing her as being gone for the sake of a little bit of angst and for Ruby to understand that the Doctor doesn't have anyone else, or it was setting her up to somehow factor into things, which I'm not really thrilled about the idea of either. Long story short on this, my idea of Susan is something that you do not touch on until you literally want to end the show. Like, in my mind, the very last episode of Doctor Who that ever gets aired, and like, this is very much wishful thinking at this point. Franchises are not allowed to die anymore, and they never will be. But in theory, if the show ever ended for good, in my mind, the very last episode ends with the Doctor returning to Susan and fulfilling the promise that the first Doctor made that
one day I shall come back.
But that's realistically never going to happen. So in theory, that would put Susan on the table and in the cards, but at this point, it has been so long since Susan has appeared. I can't think of anything you could do that would make it pay off that kind of weight. Does it mean that there is literally nothing? No, just means I can't think of it. So I can't really get excited about the idea, because while I fully accept that people can think of stuff that I can't think of and come up with clever notions that I wouldn't think of, I'm not going to pin all my hopes on the idea that that's going to happen. That's not a matter of ego. That's just a matter of me managing my own expectations. So all the focus on Susan and just the name Susan already had me going like, be careful. That was it. I didn't check out at that, but I was like, be real careful. Be real careful. Now, we're not necessarily in the clear because there's still a number of details yet to be filled in. But at the very least, Susan Triad is not Susan, not the Doctor's granddaughter, Susan. I actually rather like the conversation that he has with Kate, because I had kind of forgotten how few people actually know about Susan, because it was the first Doctor that left her, and he doesn't really bring her up in specific or by name very much at all. And the Brigadier didn't meet the Doctor until his second incarnation. So the Brig wouldn't have known about Susan. So Kate wouldn't know about Susan. Most of the Doctor's companions wouldn't know about Susan. That was kind of an odd thing for me to realize, because, like, not that I expect every companion to know about every other companion, but that's his granddaughter. I also kind of like the timey-wiminess notion that he knows his granddaughter but doesn't know his kids.
You can have a granddaughter before a daughter?
Life of a Time Lord.
I find that to be a cute idea. Does it contradict some stuff we've heard before? Yeah.
Don, I've been a father before.
What?
Lost all that a long time ago.
Anything that I find was deeply important? No, not really. And more to the point, this is, again, one of those things I don't really ever want to be filled in. So if you want to just throw out vague notions and they're a little contradictory, like, I'm okay with that. Just don't start trying to fix it. That's more the job of the lore hound side of fandom. They can have their field day with that. Go and have fun. That's not for me. But I found that conversation sweet. And again, I kind of like that idea. It was a cute idea. Also related to Susan, I really like the Doctor's fear.
I bring disaster. Kate, disaster. What if I go back and ruin her?
Like that's, as a parent, that's kind of heartbreaking to hear somebody have that kind of concern for someone who they very clearly love. And whether that's a valid concern or not, I would say not really, especially because she would tell you she wants to see you. But I get the fear, and the fear felt pretty sincere. I like what they're doing with Mel. I think planting her as like a part of a media team, that's actually a good use of her, sort of slipping her in as an undercover agent. And it gets us a little sense of Susan as a person, and the fact that everyone's very surprised that she seems to be genuinely nice, which she's a tech billionaire. Yeah, actually that should surprise you. That should actually probably be a massive red flag, the fact that she isn't a weird creep. Yeah. So we have Ruby decide that what they're going to try and do to figure out who her mom is, to take this old beat up CCTV tape that she and her mom have and bring it into unit. Now, there's a couple of bits of oddness about that. The bringing up of, hey, let's figure out Ruby's origin while we're trying to sort all this other stuff out just seems a little ham-fisted.
We also have another mystery woman. Okay, so Ruby is not the mystery woman, but your mother is.
And then Ruby's mother deciding she wants to come to unit feels really ham-fisted.
Well, if your mother's part of it, then Ruby, you can tell her your mother is too.
Not that I have an issue with Carla. I actually like her a fair bit, and she has some nice moments in this. But at the same time, it felt real contrived as a way to just leave Ruby's grandmother alone with Mrs. Flood. That was such a hand of the author moment. It did not feel organic at all, especially with Ruby's mother basically just going, oh, your mom's involved with unit? Then since I'm your mom, I'm going to be involved in unit. Like, really? Not that I can't buy that she'd have that kind of attitude. It just didn't flow very well at all for me. That felt a bit contrived. We have the whole thing with the time window.
Unit was absolutely forbidden to experiment with any form of time technology.
Do you have a time window?
10 floors down.
I love that the doctor laughs at how janky it is.
This is rough.
And I also kind of like that being backed up by Kate with the fact like, yeah, this barely gives us anything.
We saw the signing of the Declaration of Independence, but all I could tell you was the color of the quill, which was white.
That's fun. That's fun banter. I enjoy it. So the whole thing with the time window and using the tape to try and revisit, it's decently done. There is kind of a problem with it, but stick a pin in that. I'm going to circle back into it because it ties into sort of the nature of this episode as a whole. Not necessarily the specifics that go on it, but just what it is and what it's doing and its purpose within this season. But we'll come back to that when I start talking about stuff that happens in the tail end. There's a fair amount of tension in this whole thing. Although as soon as that guy went out of sight, I'm like, well, he's dead. Just immediately I knew it. So we have this whole thing going on with just this swirling effect and this voice saying he's in hell. And we have Ruby's mother saying the beast.
It's the beast.
And that perked my ears up because that's a name we know. Now, is that who's coming? Not exactly, but it's also not irrelevant. Sneaky. Russell, I see you. I actually really appreciate how much Kate clearly cares that a member of her team just died. Like, she's upset. She seems to even be angry at the doctor, especially because she told him not to send this guy around to the backside of that TARDIS. And that's good. I like that for her. I like her not treating these people as disposable. Oh, another great moment with Mel is her just kind of talking the doctor out of his funk long enough to just get him to get up and do the job.
Now stop grizzling and fix it.
I'm like, they're using Mel really well, and especially given what a divisive companion she was at the time she was on the show. This is real good. This is a real good use of Mel. But that starts to get us right into the thick of things as the doctor introduces himself to Susan. it seems pretty clear pretty immediately that this is not his granddaughter, but there's still something going on. All these faces, all these lives, and she dreams them. So what is going on? We get a recurrence of the whole Harbinger thing from the Devil's Cord. And there's this sound from the TARDIS, which... this was a better plant than any of the other stuff you had going on. This was a better sneaky recurring plant than Susan Twist showing up over and over again. Better than Mrs. Flood, better than the snow, better than any of it. Because you didn't draw nearly as much attention to it. I didn't even realize this thing had kept happening over and over again until I saw a tweet from the official Doctor Who account, which laid out the fact that we have been hearing this since Wild Blue Yonder.
Is it working?
I think so. Strange.
Strange.
What was that?
Nothing. Indigestion.
Oh, sneaky. That was good. Like, this is the kind of sneaky mystery box stuff that I actually like, realizing that it was in front of me the whole time. I generally don't like as much things like Susan Twist showing up over and over again because you start drawing attention to it. I would say up until the 4th episode where they first had Ruby go, haven't I seen you before? I was actually kind of liking that she just showed up and they drew no attention to it. But then they started doing it and I'm like, oh, and that's what I don't like about the mystery boxes. You're basically going, see this? This'll be a mystery. And I am not entertained by that. Again, not to say that it's bad that other people are. I'm not a theory kind of person. I don't like to guess. I don't like to speculate. My brain doesn't work that way. But for me to realize you snuck something like that sound under my nose and I didn't even notice, the only time I remember it being called out was in Rogue. Oh, see, now that's good. And that's when the penny drops. Sutek. I won't lie. That got me. I didn't expect it. I didn't see it coming. You did cheat because you did this whole, oh, it was the wrong anagram. Yeah, but you also had to change one of the letters. You had to change the C to a K to make it work. I'll forgive that, though. I actually will. It's a cheat, but I'll let it go. Because it's still got a big, big grin on my face. Oh, yeah, I did film some of my reactions to this. I would say, like, I'll put it up as a treat for patrons. The full reaction video, it's actually not much to watch. I mostly just sit there in silence because I wasn't going to keep pausing it to make commentary and I wasn't going to talk over it. I just had it on to catch any very sincere reactions I might have had. And I'm glad I did, but, like, the whole thing to watch it would actually be insanely boring. You would have to really just like my face. And if you do, I appreciate it. I'm still not putting that up anywhere. Sutek. So if you're unaware, and if you are unaware, this might also not have worked as well for you. I'll come back to that in a minute. If you're unaware, Sutek was the villain from a Doctor Who serial called The Pyramids of Mars. He only appeared the once, but is pretty well liked in the fandom. Largely just for how intimidating he was. Between the vocal performance by Gabriel Wolf.
I am Sutek the Destroyer. Where I tread, I leave nothing but dust and darkness. I find that good.
Who comes back in this.
I think we can succeed.
And also voiced the Beast in The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit.
Is that your religion?
Which was why the Beast reference happened earlier, said by Ruby's mom. So they brought him back. Dude's 91 at the moment, for the record. So good. That voice is so good.
I am Sutek, the god of death.
And they layer it with other voices mixed in, mostly Harriet Harbinger. Mixed in there as well, but also some with Susan Twist, which is also something that they did for The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit. Now, does that mean the Beast is literally Sutek? No, not necessarily. Again, if you're more into theory crafting and lore, maybe you can make that argument. Maybe they're different elements of literally the same being. Maybe they simply represent the same kind of thing and they're being thematically linked through the voice. Whatever. Go and have your fun and do that. The fact that it is the same voice, though, that like I'm here for it. I'm here for that because I love that voice.
I bring Sutek's gift of death.
Gabriel Wolf does so much, and he's not just giving a booming vocal performance. There's nuance, there's beats, there's moments, there's inflection. He does a lot, and I really love that they got him back for this. And hard cut to be continued. This, on a first watch, is pretty good. And again, no matter what I say after this, that did get me. God damn it, you got me. Not only did it surprise me, it put a smile on my face. And I will never pretend otherwise. That having been said, there's a couple of issues. The first is that, like a lot, not all, but like a lot of Russell T. Davies' first part of two-part finales, it's almost entirely set up. I would say of the two-part finales that Russell T. Davies did in his first run, 3 out of 5 were just extended setup in that first one. Army of Ghosts is extended setup. The Stolen Earth is extended setup. Bad Wolf is admittedly kind of the odd one out because the story it starts out telling and spends a decent chunk of its runtime telling is kind of disconnected from where it's going. But the fact that it doesn't really go anywhere with its satire of reality television and pretty much just drops the entire thing once the plot for the finale kicks in, I'm going to call the whole thing a delaying tactic and lump it in with the other two. Now, there were some where the first part actually feels a little bit more substantive in its own right. I think that's the case with Sound of Drums. I think that's the case with The End of Time Part 1. But with the other ones, and now also with this one, the first part, honestly, it's the kind of thing that I would tend to skip. Like, if I want to re-experience the thrill of the finale, assuming the second half works, we'll find out next week, odds are I'd kind of skip over this. Because imagine trying to go back and watch this a second time, now knowing who the villain reveal is. There's whole stretches of this that are so drawn out for no reason other than to delay us getting answers. And actually think of how much worse it's going to be after next episode when we presumably find out who Ruby's mom is. Because we still don't have an answer to that. I suppose technically we still don't have an answer to what Mrs. Flood's deal is either, but she's obviously tied in with Sutek in specific, so we at least know a little about her at this point. But we're going to find out who Ruby's mom is as well, and so that means that all this extended stuff with the videotape and the time window, and they're in there for a while, and it's drawn out like, oh, here comes the mom. Here comes the mom. Oh, we're not going to see the face. Oh, it jumped. Why did it? Oh, did anyone see? Did anyone see? No, nobody saw. And like, it already kind of felt a little bit stretched and a little bit overly teasing for my taste, even watching it on a first go. Imagine trying to watch it a second time when, like, you already know what the answer is. It is possible to make that anticipation still land on a second viewing, but it's not easy, and I'm not inclined to think that this is going to do it. Now, does that make this a bad episode? No. It just makes it one that I am unlikely to revisit, even when wanting to re-experience the finale later on down the line. There is, however, the other aspect of this, which is I don't think this hit right with new viewers. And normally I don't speculate on other people's opinions too much. I kind of go out of my way to not find out too much about what other people think of stuff before I get my own thoughts down. But I did nose around a little bit, and people like my friend Jessie, the impact of this was lessened because she doesn't know who this is. She's only watched New Who. She hasn't done Classic. She doesn't have a clue who Sutek is. There's also this tweet from Mr. TARDIS saying he had multiple friends and family texting him saying, who the hell was that? And the thing is, while I suspect that this reveal probably hit longtime fans, or at least fans who have gone back and experienced some of classic, decently to great, this, all right, the very clear comparison to make is to Utopia, which was not technically the first part of a 2-part finale. It's kind of its own thing. Or you could argue it's the first part of a 3-part finale from series 3. Regardless, there's more than a few parallels to be made between this and Utopia. And by pretty much every measure, Utopia is better. This is a lesser version of that for a couple reasons. The first is Utopia is actually telling a story that has its own narrative and is interesting to watch even if you're not waiting for the reveal. Partially because we didn't know that there was going to be a reveal with Professor Yana. By the time that episode started, we were not expecting some kind of reveal. We weren't even necessarily waiting on a reveal for the You Are Not Alone to happen in that episode in particular. So it's just going about telling its story and then, boom, drops the bomb on us that that's the master. But more to the point, even if you didn't know who the master was, that moment still works because it establishes, before getting into the nature of the master, it establishes that this is a Time Lord. And the show had spent 3 series up to that point reiterating over and over again, the Doctors, the last of the Time Lords, they're all gone. So that moment already hits like a brick, just knowing he's a Time Lord, even if you don't know who the master is. There's still something to latch onto and get excited about, even if you were new to the show and had not delved into any of classic by the time you got to the back end of series 3. That is not the case here. If you don't know who Sutekh is, this could be literally anyone. This might as well be a brand new made up person, but the problem is it's clearly built up and designed to appear like, ooh, it's the return of this horrible villain. Like, okay, but if you don't know who that is, how do you think this lands? And I'm sure some people will say, oh, but they set up that there are gods. We've had the Toymaker, we've had Maestro. Doesn't that kind of set this up to have some value? No, not really, because it's still delivered in a way where all the weight is put on the name. Sutekh is not properly identified to people who don't know who this is. If this had been someone completely original, you would have given more information for people, and it's just not here. Now, I suppose one could argue that either the intent or the hope is that it would cause newer fans to go, oh, I guess I should look into this. I guess I should experience some of the classic stuff. And the thing is, I don't think that's something where you should force the viewer's hand. I think if you're going to try and claim that this is being made accessible to new audiences, you need to keep it accessible to them, especially with big moments like this, because otherwise they're just going to feel like, oh, this isn't for me, is it? This moment was for the old fans. And that's okay to do with smaller moments. But when it's something big like this, I think more people are just going to feel either left out or confused. And I think that's not the greatest approach. Now, do I know for a fact that every person who was a new viewer who either came on during this brand new launch with what is now being called season 1, or even who started with the revival series but hasn't taken in classic, do I know for a fact that they all had a off-put reaction? No, of course not. I don't know that. Maybe some of them were excited just because it was presented well. Maybe some of them are excited to go and check out some classic stuff, but that just feels like gambling with your audience's reaction. And I don't know about that. Like, do I have a solution? No, not really. If you're going to bring back Sutekh, I think it makes sense to make a big deal out of it. I think it might have been a better call to do a deeper cut villain like this for the second series and maybe either create somebody new or bring in somebody who is already well known. I kind of favor doing something completely new and like save the more recurring stuff like Dalek, Cyberman, the Master, etc. for a later season. But yeah, I think sticking this as the finale villain for the first season in a season that again is being marketed and pushed and appears to largely be designed to be inviting to people who've never seen the show before to get the finale and then go, ooh, it's this villain, you know, and a bunch of them are just going to go,
I don't even know who you are.
I don't know. Just seems slightly out of place compared to how a lot of the rest of the show has been designed for this season. Is it bad? No. I think it might be a little bit of a miscalculation. Did it hamper my enjoyment of the thing? Hell no. You saw my face. Oh, I was thrilled by this. But I also can't help but think, ooh, is anyone else going to be? Like, there's a reason when I did my review of 73 Yards, I talked about how much I loved that episode, but I also said repeatedly, I get why other people won't. But in that case, it wasn't the finale. I am more prepared to say that there's this one episode that is custom built for somebody like me and a bunch of other fans don't get, and for me to say that's okay for a middle of the season episode. For the finale, you should probably try and bring everybody together a little bit better than I think this does. But I don't want to dwell on that any longer. Again, largely just because I'm kind of forced to be somewhat speculative about the reactions of other people. And I don't want to do that any more than I already have. As I said, I had some stuff to reference to back up that there are definitely some people who are thrown off by this, but I'm not going to make any more guesses, and I'm not going to dig into other people's reaction before releasing this. So how widespread is that? I don't actually know, but it makes sense to me that that would happen. So we have a finale to go. We've got, I'd say, one more major mystery to cover, which is who is Ruby's mom and what the hell. I would say that, like, even with this doesn't really explain why Susan Triad, Susan Twist, however we want to talk about her. I swear she was cast just because of her name. No, she wasn't. She was, like, legit good in the part. So, no, it wasn't just that. But, like, Russell T Davies must have been counting his lucky stars when he found an actor who was perfect for what he had in mind, and her name is Susan Twist. Anyways, we don't really get an explanation of why she is spread across time and space like that. I'm not sure we will. I'm not holding my breath for that one. We might get more of an explanation on Mrs. Flood. We dang well better get more of an explanation on Ruby's mom, because that's the one you've really been building up. Like, if you want to leave some of these dangling either completely unexplained, like I kind of expect why Susan Triad is all over time and space to not really get explained, or whether it's something you're going to boot until later, like what I kind of suspect might happen with Mrs. Flood. Fine. Ruby's mom, you got to deal with that. You got to deal with that one. You've been putting too much emphasis on it. Don't kick that can down the road. So we got that. I have no predictions. I'm not a prediction channel. I may have mentioned that. But other than that, this is, honestly, in an odd way, my feelings of this are kind of similar to Space Babies. I know that's a weird comparison. What I mean by that is, this is very much typical of what RTD has always done with this show. Space Babies, like it or not, is very much in line with how RTD tends to do first episodes of seasons. This episode, like it or not, is very much in line with how he's handled most of the first part of his two-part finales. All setup, all tease, not a lot of plot. Some good moments, some good interactions, some good lines, some stuff I like. But a lot of teasing. That's almost all of what we're here for. But what'd you think about this one? The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. Those all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful. You are valid. You are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Jean Foray, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Linda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Renabulax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Kasparov, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toku Bluhuvian, Pao Rabajagal, and Mara G. If you'd like to hear your name in the credits or even just see them, there are rewards on the Patreon, so maybe check those out.